My name is Vinay. I know I'm a content strategist, but really I want to talk about fashion. And I actually like terrible slides because I don't make them any better. But I am really interested in fashion. And what I want to talk about is why I think men's fashion is a lot better than it was 20 years ago, but it still is quite boring. Justin Timberlake does look massively better now, but I think it's still been quite the ordeal. So, I'm not the first person to talk about this recently. The New York Times talked about it too, but if you looked at these two pictures, while you may say that Buzz Bissinger on the right, he's the guy who was the writer behind Friday Night Lights, that one looks like the average man. This one here, I don't know, most people would say looks like an average man. They'd say he's either European or a gay man. The first time we ever think about fashion as a guy is when you're dressing up for prom, and then there's basically two moves you can take. You're either going to go all black with a brightly colored tie, because that looks really styling, or you're the one person who goes in all white, or unfortunately two people who dress in all white in grad. You all remember those people. But you wonder, girls didn't look like that, so where do we look for style? Well, for most women, this is Diane Kruger in, I believe, a Dior, and Jennifer Lawrence in Chanel, there's this sort of trend where things that go on in couture translate down to what goes on the red carpet, translates into what we think is generally stylish. So ostensibly then, couture for men might give us some inclination of what men might actually want to wear. But I've yet to see anybody in any of these. These are all spring 2013. I love that floral jacket. Maybe another way to call this presentation is, where can we find a world where a guy wears those things normally? Because that's Tom Brown, and everyone knows who he is, but no one will wear that. And that's Lanvin, again, another popular brand, but no one seems to really wear that. What do they wear on the red carpet is, it's more of the same. I mean, now at least they've gotten over the monochrome outfit, and now everyone's just wearing a black suit with a bow tie, but these are all the best dressed men on the Oscars, and all they're doing is wearing basically the exact same thing. So where did we get that idea from? Well, actually, when you talk about men's fashion, the first person we talk about is a guy named Beau Brummel. He was like an English dandy, the first man we called the stylish man in the late 19th and early 20th century, because he lived through 2 centuries. And his basic thing was he dressed cleanly. He wore very simple clothes, but they were well pressed and, they were well measured. He set a really low bar, and guys were really happy to make it. And when you think about rules for men's style, a lot of it is basically, don't screw this up, right? Just wear a shirt and a tie and pants and a jacket and boom, right? That's style as far as men are concerned, or as far as the rules we hear about when guys talk about fashion or learn about it. Just to make the contrast clear, for guys it's a question of how long should my shirt be with my suit jacket cuff? Whereas for girls it's way more interesting things like, how are the different ways I wear this? What looks good on my body like this or that? Whereas for guys we're basically still stuck on some sort of bland notion of what are the rules that I need to follow, and do I follow them well enough to make it matter? Our current male paragons of style on Mad Men basically just do this really well. There's nothing interesting going on here. There's nothing awesome, but thank God they're all well dressed. It's all of a sudden this is the new miracle in men's fashion that we've now had, where if you no longer look dirty, that's great. And I think the question I want to ask is, so maybe now we're well-dressed, but what about being stylish? And, this isn't the first time this question has come up. It's just that we're really hesitant to deal with it. The classic way in which we talk about people trying to be styling or different was when we used the word metrosexual. And most people don't even use that word now, and I think that's part of my point. But when you think about metrosexual, basically it was some sense of being more embracing of one's feminine side, is one of the definitions I saw behind it. But the idea is basically some combination of looking either like a European football player or being someone who is vaguely homosexual, because there's a huge undercurrent of homophobia behind what we talked about when it comes to men dressing well. And we've started to move from a world where, David Coates had this book called The Metrosexual, talking about basically the ways in which when men dress really well, there's this sense of being basically gendered as a homo-esque individual. He didn't actually use homo-esque, but I think that makes more sense. To a world now where suddenly we have Jason Collins coming out. This is the best, worst graph ever you'll see. Basically, my point is this. It's interesting that the growth in the search for men's style basically corresponds with when people started caring less or caring more about equality in marriage. And the reason why I think that's important is because I think there is a general, this is the best correlation any political scientist will ever see. It's this sort of general, if you don't believe me, check this out. In 1996, boy bands, all gray, totally bad. 2013, boy band, all gray, totally fly, right? Like, this is the same concept, but look how much better we're executing it, right? No one here is worried about that anymore. It's not like they're that cool. Maybe we just changed the word. Now, instead of saying someone's metrosexual-esque, we're saying they're a dirty hipster. So, maybe there isn't that much on the grooming end of it, but at least this sense of style is now this sort of hipster class of individuals, all with perfectly coiffed beards. Thank you. Now when we talk about men's hygiene, though, we've got a total different world because it's super manly, right? As long as there's a wrench or there's whiskey in it, it's a man product. And when you go on Shoppers, you will totally accept it. But that being said, I think there is a world that I find really interesting when it comes to men's fashion, and that's surprisingly the world of the professional basketball player. So in 2006, October 17th, the NBA 2005 introduced a style code. Now, this was mainly because of concerns about the image, a whole big talk altogether. Punchline is, 10 years later, a bunch of young millionaires with a bunch of money started having interesting styles that you see them at fashion shows all the time, and they look really neat and cool because of it. And they've actually developed their own language vernacular. Last year during the NBA Finals, some reporter noticed that all the 4 major players in the finals all wore fakies. They all have great vision, so they just pop out the lenses. And they're like, Russell, isn't everyone wearing fakies? And Russell's like, look, man, they're just copying my style. To which the other team got really angry. And one of the guys is like, he doesn't know his fashion history in the NBA. It's been around for decades. And the other guy's like, well, look, I've been doing this for years and years. Which brings us back to the question, who will wear that floral jacket? D-Wade will. But Nick Young might say he got there first. Thank you, everybody.